Hello everyone, I am Hana, evolutionary astrologer. Welcome back to my channel. And in this video, let's unpack this upcoming lunar eclipse, which is going to be a full moon eclipse in Pisces. And this is going to be on August 27th or 28th, depending on where you are in the world. This is the second eclipse of this eclipse season. We have already experienced the first one. This was back on August 12th. That was a solar eclipse in Leo, the new moon. And now, 2 weeks later, we arrive at the lunar eclipse, the full moon at 4 degrees of Pisces. So, in many ways, the Leo eclipse, because it was a new moon, it was about opening a new door. It was about planting new seeds. And now that we arrive at the full moon, full moons are moments in the moon cycle where things culminate, where the moon is full of light, pregnant with light. And when there's more light, we're able to see more. So it's a time for insights, for revelations, and even for completion, because Pisces has a lot to do with completion and releasing. So we're going to get to that in just a moment. But before that, before we start to speak about Pisces, I want to talk to you about eclipse season because even though the eclipse days are very important, but think about how the eclipse season lasts weeks. It's a really large window that stretches for at least 6 weeks. So it begins, it's like the energy starts to gain momentum before the first eclipse happens. And then we have that 2 week in between eclipses. And then we have the second eclipse, which is where we are now, about to get to our second eclipse, the lunar eclipse. And then after that, the energy is still very present and it slowly, gradually starts to diminish. So we are in this intensity of it, and you might be feeling it. You might be feeling things moving in your life. Maybe there are unexpected turn of events. Maybe there's been important decisions, conversations. Maybe you've received news. Maybe there's been doors opening and others' doors closing. Maybe someone has entered your life, or maybe someone has left your life. Or maybe nothing dramatic really happened, but something inside you is changing. Maybe there's been priorities that are shifting, and you might be seeing something different now. Or maybe there's been new insights, new realizations that something that maybe you wanted isn't actually what you want anymore. All of this is eclipse season because eclipse seasons are portals. Portals when we can say that this higher intelligence is really active, is fully participating in the conversation of our lives, where we're going, what we're doing, who we are with. So maybe you can call this divine timing or destiny or the hand of fate. Maybe you can call it the cosmos or the universe or life or God or goddess or source, whatever language works for you. But ultimately, eclipse seasons often have this quality of our evolutionary process, our soul journey, our destiny accelerating forward. So sometimes we're going to recognize this immediately. Sometimes it's going to be very clear. So there might be things happening for you that are very clear, very obvious. But sometimes things are happening that we won't really notice. We won't even connect the dots until much later. Oh, it was during this August eclipse season 2026 that I made that decision, or I started reading that book, or I met that person, or maybe it was a time when I stopped trying to make something work, right? So whatever's happening, there is this quality of really important and it's meaningful. So even if there's nothing too dramatic happening, pay close attention. See, observe what life is showing to you, what's repeating, what's changing, where and how you're being pulled towards, and also what might be falling away as well. Um, so let's talk about Pisces because this eclipse, this lunar eclipse is happening in the sign of Pisces. And at the fourth degree of Pisces, it's a full moon. Remember that full moons bring illumination. This is a time where something can reach its fullness. Something is becoming more visible. Something that might have been developing beneath the surface suddenly becomes much more visible, much harder to ignore. And the eclipse is going to amplify that. So this is a time of culmination. This is a time of completion and release and turning points. So there can be a certain level of clarity here, a certain level of, okay, I know what to do now. Or maybe there isn't much of a choice, but it's where life is taking you. And Pisces brings uh, a certain level of endings, not necessarily as a bad thing. Sometimes something ending is a really big act of grace, right? Sometimes the things that we have been trying to keep alive is exactly what is preventing the next chapter from beginning. So Pisces is the 12th sign of the zodiac. It's the last sign of the zodiac, and it brings that quality of completion. Imagine the zodiac as a journey. Aries begins, initiates, and then we go through the full zodiacal wheel until we reach Pisces. Pisces dissolves. Pisces says, okay, now I've gone through this journey. Now I have to let go in order to start anew. And that's not always easy for us, right? I think most of us can be quite good at beginning things, very good at doing and planning and fixing and analyzing and trying. But sometimes the best strategy is to simply surrender, let go, and be at a state of full acceptance of what's happening. And that does not mean to be passive. That's a very different thing. But Pisces teaches us how to move with the flow of our lives without pushing control, pushing our agenda, and moving with it. So it is about taking action too, but it's a different type of action. It is a moving with life type of action. And there's a lot of humility in that, right? But there's also freedom because sometimes we spend so much energy and time and focus and resistance trying to control things that might not be serving us. Maybe it's about other people's feelings, other people's decisions. So there's something about this eclipse that is telling us and teaching us and inviting us to release our grip a little and to trust that life knows something that we might not know yet. So pay attention to if there's something in your life that has run its course, that has maybe completed its purpose in your life. That might be a version of yourself. That might be a new chapter. That might be something, an expectation. Maybe it's a relationship. Maybe it's an old identity or a pattern or even a dream or a vision that doesn't necessarily is part of your future anymore. Maybe it's resentment, maybe it's guilt or disappointment, or the idea that your life was supposed to unfold in a certain way. It's an energy that help us to bring more compassion, to bring more forgiveness, and release the things that have been holding us back. And it doesn't have to look dramatic, okay? You don't need to burn everything down and move to Bali. Sometimes release is very quiet and it's happening within. Sometimes it's as simple as, okay, I am done carrying this forward, right? Pisces also has a lot to do with the unseen world. It has everything to do with the great mysteries of life and how the boundaries between this world and the following and the unseen world is very thin. So this is a time where we can all feel more attuned to our dreams, our intuition, spirituality, whatever that means to you, mysticism. And it's a time to also receive these cosmic downloads and to nourish our relationship with what we cannot necessarily see or measure or explain. So around this eclipse, pay extra attention to your inner world. Pay attention to your dreams, your intuition, the synchronicities that are happening in your life, and even the strange little nudges that don't necessarily make a lot of logical sense, but somehow they feel important. It feels like life is speaking to you, you know? So for example, maybe you'll get to speak to someone who you haven't spoken in years, or you might have a very vivid dream, or there's a certain level of intuition, something inside you is speaking to you. So I really recommend anything that makes you feel more connected to whatever name you want to call it, to God, to source, to nature, to life, to the universe. So meditation, prayer, spend time in nature, music, arts, something as simple as sitting under a tree. Anything around water is really, really relevant here. Pisces is a water sign. So even spending a little bit of time in your bathtub or going to a river or the ocean if you can. Pisces speaks a very different language, and it's a time where life is not communicating us through facts and bullet points. It's about symbols, dreams, feelings, images, synchronicities. So this is a great time for spiritual practice and anything that makes you feel more connected to this higher intelligence and ultimately to yourself, right? Now, Pisces also has a shadow, and we need to talk about this too because Pisces is very beautiful because it's about unity. It's about connecting to something greater than ourselves. It's about, as I mentioned, forgiveness and unconditional love. These things are beautiful. But it's not all just rainbows and angels and mystical downloads. Every sign has a shadow. So the biggest shadow, the biggest risk here during this time is escaping because there might be overwhelming situations because we might be feeling so much. You know, it's a time where things touch you more deeply and you may feel more porous. Things are coming in and out, feelings, emotions, thoughts, and dreams. So be careful with anything that takes you out of the moment. So the things that might be detrimental to you, like alcohol, substances, food, relationships, fantasy land, even social media, TV, reality TV, anything that is taking you out of what is actually happening. This could be even constantly sleepy. You actually might feel more sleepy and needing to sleep more during this time. But be careful to not be in a space where you are escaping other than being present with yourself and what's happening. This could also be about helping people so much that you don't have to deal with your actual problems and what the situation is about. And also being very positive. Oh, everything is going to work out. Everything is fine. It's true, everything will work out, but be careful not to use this in order to avoid reality and dealing with problems, right? Sometimes our intuition is actually fear. Sometimes we call it something unconditional love when it's actually a complete lack of boundaries and saying yes to things that you might not be able to really do or even want to do. So this eclipse may illuminate some of those places. So where have I been escaping rather than truly surrendering? Where am I be fantasizing, idealizing something because I don't want to see things the way they actually are? And am I waiting for something, for someone to become my savior, my salvation? Am I the rescuer? Am I constantly helping and saving and rescuing people? Am I sacrificing myself unnecessarily? Those are all very important Piscean questions that might be relevant for you during this time. Remember that compassion does not mean self-abandonment. Pisces has an extraordinary capacity for compassionate because it understands people suffering and that people make mistakes, that people are not perfect, that people are wounded, right? There's something quite beautiful about this compassion and acceptance of Pisces. But remember that compassion that does not mean self-abandonment, right? So you can understand how someone behaves, why they behave the way they do, but still decide that their behavior is not acceptable in your life. You can forgive someone and still have boundaries, and you can love someone deeply and still say no, right? And you can recognize other people's pains and suffering without having to make yourself responsible for healing it. So this distinction is really important. Now, I want to show you the chart of this eclipse. So here it is. You have the full moon. So you have this opposition between the moon and the sun. And the sun, so the moon is in Pisces, but the sun is in Virgo, which means that this Virgo Pisces axis is very active here. And this is an axis that has everything to do with service, with work, employment, and health. So during this eclipse, there is this conversation happening around work, employment, your job, your coworkers, employees, the responsibilities, the functionality, and the daily routines of your work, and how you're spending your time and energy. So there could be changes around work. Maybe there's a culmination of a completion of a job. Maybe you're leaving, you're deciding to leave that position or change your schedule or take a different role or reconsider the kind of work you want to be doing. There could also be changes internally with coworkers, with employees. It might be a time where a project is finishing or something is shifting, responsibilities are shifting, things are happening behind the scenes within the workplace that are now becoming more visible. Or maybe it's something, that you realize that you don't want to be doing this work anymore, or you're starting a new job. So it's going to depend so much on your context, but that is the theme. And remember also that eclipses don't always bring the entire event on the eclipse day. Sometimes, things begin developing around this time that will continue to unfold over the weeks and months ahead. And again, takes us back to the same question, that profound question between service and self-sacrifice, and that huge difference, because Virgo and Pisces, they want to help. They want to contribute and heal and support and ultimately make life better for other people. So you also have to check in to see if you're not over functioning, if you're not over fixing. Maybe you're doing more than your job actually requires. And this could be your actual job, but maybe this is about the roles you're taking in your family or with your friends. Maybe you're carrying responsibilities that might actually belong to other people, right? At the cost of your well-being. So check in with yourself to see if you are sacrificing yourself, where if the work is draining you too much, or maybe you're taking responsibility for something that isn't actually yours. Virgo also brings the themes of health and habits and routine and your schedule and your organization, and ultimately the everyday systems that hold our lives together. And sometimes the big spiritual Piscean realization that I was just talking about is actually that we might experience might actually be incredibly practical. Maybe the revelation is not about, I finally discovered the meaning of the universe. Maybe it's something as simple as, okay, I need to sleep more. This schedule is not sustainable, or I need help. I can't keep saying yes to everyone, or this job is consuming my life, or maybe I need to organize my days a little bit differently. So think about how these realizations are evolutionary, because ultimately Pisces, the spirituality of Pisces, needs to be connected to everyday life, not separate. And this is why they work, Pisces, Virgo, they work as an axis. We have to bring whatever we're learning into the body, into our work, into our routines, into the way we actually live our days, because we don't live in a monastery. At least most of us don't, right? We have bills to pay, we have things to do. So, how do we bring the Pisces medicine and wisdom, which is trust and spirituality and acceptance and unconditional love, with the Virgo discernment, with the Virgo that teaches us to pay attention, because Pisces sees the whole ocean. Virgo notices what is in the water, what's actually in the water. And we need both, because spirituality without discernment can easily become fantasy, right? Intuition without proper grounding can become projection. And compassion without boundaries will lead most likely to self-sacrifice. And Virgo without the Pisces can lead to a lot of hyper control and analyzing too much, perfectionism, trying to organize every single detail of life, because uncertainty can make us feel very, very uncomfortable. So this eclipse is saying, where do I need to surrender control? Yes, but also where do I need greater discernment? Where do I need to trust my intuition, but also check the facts? And where do I need to accept my own imperfections and the imperfections of those around me in my life? And where is something genuinely asking to be improved, right? So it's not about choosing Virgo or Pisces, it's about finding the wisdom between them. Another thing I want to mention is the Mercury cazimi. Another very important piece of this eclipse is that Mercury's cazimi, the sun in Virgo. Mercury and the sun are very, very close. When Mercury is extremely close to the center of the sun, this is called, it's so beautiful, it's called being in the heart of the sun. So symbolically, think about this happening alongside the lunar eclipse. And remember that full moons are times where things are illuminated, something is being revealed, something is being more visible than before. And what is Mercury? Information, communication, conversations, messages, decisions, paperwork, deals, thinking, learning, knowledge, books, negotiations, the news, exchanging ideas. So all of this is sitting at the heart of this eclipse. So think about how this is a time where we can be receiving important information. And this could be through conversations. Someone is telling you something, you receive an email, a message, you receive a text, you receive a phone call, you receive an email, an invitation, an announcement, you're reading a book, something, or you're studying something that brings that deeper realization and insight, something that you didn't know before may become now known. And something that maybe was confusing might make a little bit more sense here. Or maybe no one says anything to you at all, but deep within, you finally understand something for yourself. That's important too, because Mercury is not just about external communication. Mercury is also about our minds and the stories that are playing in our minds, in our heads. Um, so also pay attention to your inner dialogue and monologue, and not just what you're feeling. That's Pisces feeling. It's a water sign, has to do with feelings, emotions, our emotional world, our emotional landscape. But Mercury has to do with our minds and our thoughts. So this can be an extraordinary moment of mental clarity. I really love in my own personal life, I love Sun, Mercury, cazimi days, I always feel like I receive important information. Um, and so again, pay attention to the conversations around this eclipse, the information that is coming your way. Pay attention to what people are saying. Also pay attention to what people are not saying, and all the messages that are coming your way. And maybe you're signing something very important, or there's a deal, something is being created during this eclipse season that may involve employment, work, job, a client, a project, your schedule, right? An employee, your work environment, etc. Um, so allow the information to arrive, right? Listen carefully and read the email twice, right? Gather the facts and then let your intuition speak. So that's the Pisces, the intuition, but the Virgo is check the details. That is the gift of this eclipse. Something that might have been floating around in the Piscean fog may find its language. Um, so this, and then the last thing I want to mention is that Pisces brings healing, right? So Pisces reminds us that healing doesn't always happen through working harder. Sometimes healing is that sense of finally stop resisting and fighting things. So there's a big invitation here, as I was mentioning in the beginning, to heal through acceptance, which might bring grief or crying, forgiving, resting, creating, sleeping, praying, or being held, or holding someone, or even something as simple as sitting beside the ocean and allowing yourself to feel whatever needs to be felt. But the question is not how to fix this right away. The question is, can I allow this to be what it is? And this is where things can really start to shift. Now, the last thing I want to mention is the conversation between these two eclipses. We had the first solar eclipse in Leo, which Leo is very different than Pisces. Leo is extremely fiery and expressive and creative, and it's so heart-centered. Leo is about what makes us come alive, what wants to be created through me, through you. It's about visibility. It's about your heart leading you forward. Whereas Pisces, that's coming out 2 weeks later, says, beautiful, that's great. But before you go there, what are you willing to leave behind? Leo says, follow what brings you alive. And Pisces says, release what no longer belongs. Leo creates, Pisces surrenders. Leo says yes to life, whereas Pisces says goodbye to what has completed its purpose. And the seed that you planted during the Leo eclipse, see where it's taking you. Pisces may show you that it's taking you to through an unexpected route, and that's okay. And that's part of the path forward too. Um, so some questions to work with during this eclipse. Again, pay attention to what has run its course. Are there things that I'm tired of carrying? Am I trying to control something that maybe is not working anymore? Where do I need to surrender? Are there places where I have been escaping instead of facing reality? Am I idealizing someone or something? Do I need stronger boundaries? What is my intuition trying to tell you? What is moving through me? Do I need to bring forgiveness and compassion to others or even myself? And is there a version of myself that I am ready to release? And with the Virgo Pisces axis so strongly activated here, I would also add, is the way I'm working actually working for me? Where am I serving and where am I sacrificing? Right? And are there things in my routine, my working life, my responsibilities that I need to change that are not working for me anymore? And what information and conversations are it is trying to bring more clarity and new insights and new realizations, right? And last one, what might become possible if I trusted life enough to let go, right? Remember that surrendering does not mean not doing and ending the story. Surrender is that moment where we allow the next chapter to have enough space and momentum to begin. I hope this has been helpful. I hope this video has given you some useful insights as you navigate and flow through the current of this eclipse season. I am wishing you many, many eclipse blessings, beautiful new beginnings, and the courage to release whatever is ready to be left behind. So if you enjoyed this video, give me the thumbs up. And if you found it helpful, please subscribe to my channel. It really helps to support my work and allows me to keep sharing more astrology with you. Thank you so much for being here, and I will be seeing you next time.